conservative Christian.
Okay.
And I was alarmed when you submitted H308A. And
So what's that one? What's
That's
H? Because that's a House bill on it. So.
it's, did you look at the wrong thing? I couldn't find my piece of paper.
Sorry,
I'm
sorry.
so sorry. The Johnson Amendment.
Oh, Johnson Amendment. Yeah, that's a different one. There's not a House bill number on it. So go ahead.
There's not.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. There is a House bill on it, but it's on the other side. Steve Scalise has it on the House side.
Okay.
Go ahead.
That's fine.
Okay.
So, okay. I was alarmed by that. I've known that this has been a point of contention in the Christian church since the very moment it was incepted.
Right, 1954.
Right. I was raised Southern Baptist, so I know despite this Johnson Amendment, churches are very political. And it hurts. It hurts our ministry and it hurts our witness in the world. And so I was alarmed when you presented this because I see that as placating to the belly needs instead of the spiritual needs of the church, meaning giving into something that, I'll explain that later, I'm going to write you a letter. So I'm just move on to the question. First, I need to understand your reasoning for
Johnson.
for doing this, abolishing the Johnson Amendment.
Sure. Yeah, I can walk through this. So, if you're familiar with the Johnson Amendment issue, in 1954, LBJ, when he was a senator, was frustrated that someone had campaigned against him in the 1950s for Senate in Texas. So he put into the tax code a prohibition that if you're a nonprofit, that you can do electioneering. But it's never really been defined by the IRS. So that's kind of hung out there. The IRS has also not enforced it. So it just kind of hung out there. So some nonprofits, it's not just churches, it's every nonprofit. In fact, as it was originally written, it was just nonprofits. Later, the IRS came back and reinterpreted it to also include churches. So it's all C3 organizations. So here's my beef with it. It's not new, and it's not a belly issue for me other than a constitutional issue. What we have is a current system set up that the IRS is being used to silence a group of people that work at a nonprofit to prevent their speech. I have an issue with that. I would also tell you, most pastors that I've talked to that talk about politics, and I've had plenty of public settings that I've talked about this, I've said when the church gets involved in politics, it distracts them from their original mission. The church should stay involved in what the church is called to be able to do, regardless of denomination, background, or faith group. That's uniquely what the role of the church is, and we need churches and nonprofits to be able to do what they do and to be able to do it well. But the church also, if there is an issue, whether it's a state question or whether it's a candidate that violates belief, they shouldn't be restrained and not be able to speak because they're a nonprofit. If you're a for-profit or a nonprofit or unemployed, you have the same constitutional protections to free speech, except in this setting. Just because you're a nonprofit, you don't lose your right to free assembly, you don't lose your right to due process, you don't lose any of those other rights, just to speech. And I've had folks that have said they've accepted the role of a nonprofit, they're getting government benefits, so the cost of that is losing your speech. The problem with that is that's not true if, let's say, you're on Medicaid, or you're on housing assistance, or in some other government program that is a direct assistance. You don't lose your right to free speech, and nor should you. You should still be able to have open free speech on it. You shouldn't be limited. So my issue is, I think churches and nonprofits should stay out of politics, but I have an issue with us saying as a government, you can't. Constitutionally, just because I don't want you to say something doesn't give me the right to silence you. So to me, that's the issue that has to be settled. And I know it's become a very partisan issue because Trump's talking about it now, but that's been an issue for me before. And to me, it's just a free speech issue that if you work in an arts organization and there's a state question on the ballot that's challenging arts funding, that's electioneering for you to be able to speak out on those issues. You shouldn't limit those individuals from being able to speak out on that issue.
Can't they speak out individually and not?
Just there because of nonprofit. Yes, ma'am.
Because you definitely get right into it. I want to speak about constitutionality of this now.
Go ahead.
Because of the Citizens United that passed in 2010.
Yeah.
Corporations are already just over swamping citizens with their voice, and our voice is getting
drowned out. And so what I see this as I've studied it, that you are giving them even greater power because of these pacts. There's some ethical laws. I didn't bring all my script. You know what I'm talking about, and I can write it. But you're taking away one more of our protections as citizens and giving corporations more power. That's the way I see it from studying it, because the pacts that are being regulated and made to behave a little bit, you're removing that with this.
No, actually, the funding part of it's unaffected by it. There was a previous version of this bill that was authored by Walter Jones in the House that would have done that. The one that I have would not. It still maintains all the same protections on finance. I do not want churches or nonprofits that are C3 organizations to become finance organizations for any campaign, whether that be a state question or whether that be a candidate. It shouldn't be that way, because that's a tax write-off. That's a different issue for me. This is solely on speech, and it's very narrowly written, dealing with speech.
So,
Sure. As long as you're here, because we want to honor other people's
okay, I
questions
want
too.
to move back to, from the basis of my Christian faith and bring in the citizen part of that. Citizens of the United States have free exercise of religion or not exercising religion.
That's correct.
That right is given to them by God to not, I mean,
Right.
you and I both know that.
Sure.
So please explain how giving a religious institution a tax benefit that is not extended to non-believers. They don't understand that hurts them, and that causes contention, and there needs to be some discussion and explaining.
I'm so sorry, I'm trying to figure out what benefit is not extended to non.
Well, you're giving a tax break to a church. And we've already established in the first part of my question that they're already being political, but it's already not being enforced.
You can go to any Sunday school class anywhere,
But it's a
there's
point.
somebody gets talking about politics. Yeah.
That's all they talk
Yeah.
about.
Thankfully, not all, but yeah.
But that hurts other citizens. They feel that it's unfair.
So
I'm talking from a faith perspective, and I'm speaking from a citizen.
So I'm just trying to make sure I'm tracking your question correctly. Are you saying that churches should not have nonprofit status at all, or are you saying just about the speech issue?
Well, I think if you're going to abolish the Johnson thing, I think the contention, because I listen to people, is that let's just, if they're going to continue to be political, if we're going to abolish the Johnson Amendment, then take away the tax-free status. I mean, that is what they're going to do.
You would apply that to United Way, you would apply that to every arts organization, everybody.
I mean, honestly, I want to tell you, this is personal, because I'm even involved in a neighborhood association that has this tax-free deal. And there are some radical people in there, especially with this Trump thing, that just were in my face. And I'm a conservative and I'm a Christian, but I am not way out there in the right, and I refuse to go way out there in the right.
So I would just say to you, my issue is, and just for me, an initial blush, and we can talk about it. Nonprofits do such amazing work.
I know that.
It's remarkable to me.
Nonprofits and churches do amazing work.
Yeah, and they do. Nonprofit, well, churches included. They are so much more efficient in delivering basic social services and basic needs and food and shelter and clothing than government ever will be, just because they're local and they're engaged. So whether it's arts or caring for the homeless or whatever it is, I'm one that would advocate more that we need more nonprofits engaged and more of that incentive for individuals to be able to engage in nonprofits, because it is such an effective care organization. It's one of the fights that we'll have on tax policy coming up this summer. That I will not support taking away either the tax exempt status or the ability for people to be able to write off donations to those nonprofits, because I want more nonprofits to be able to engage in the social service and local issues, because it's so much more efficient than what would happen. I think that benefits everyone. I'm sorry, I apologize.